We are now just days away from this massive military parade happening on June 14th in Washington, D.C. to commemorate both the 250th anniversary of the Army as well as Donald Trump's 79th birthday. Now, if you live in D.C. like I do, you've seen evidence of the preparations going on for a while now. There are signs everywhere saying, big event June 13th and 14th, basically don't come to downtown unless you want to be in traffic. There are pictures all over social media of tanks being brought in via train. Depending on how you feel about Donald Trump, probably makes a lot of difference about how you feel about that. But I wanted to sort of go through what we expect out of this parade, how it happened, what's going to happen there, just basic logistics, and then the counter protests and what it all means. All right, so I dug up a ton of information and data about this, and I want to just run through some numbers first, and then we'll go through the whole thing. So there is the expectation that there will be over 200,000 people in attendance at this parade. It's a day-long event. The parade is actually at 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's a 90-minute parade. It will start at the Pentagon and it will end at the National Mall. But there's an expectation that there will be over 200,000 people there. Here is what some of the amazing numbers of what is going to happen during this parade. There are going to be 28 Abrams tanks. There are going to be 50 military helicopters. There are going to be at least 7,500 active duty troops. All told, there will be 120 military vehicles. There will be 34 horses. There will be 2 mules. 2 mules. As a way for security preparations, there's 18.5 miles of fencing being put up in and around Washington. 18.5 miles. And there are 175 magnetometers that will be in use for people to get into the sort of parade route. So that's just some of the numbers. I mean, it's really sort of eye-popping stuff here. I want to go through where Donald Trump got this idea, the history of these sorts of military parades, thanks them, the cost, and then the criticism. Before I do that, let me make a quick pitch. I want you to subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to call balls and strikes no matter what uniform the batter at the plate is wearing. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not owned by any big companies. It's just me reporting without fear or favor. So I hope you subscribe. All right, so let's start with where Donald Trump got this idea. So I remember this day very distinctly. It was Bastille Day 2017. Trump, at the invite of French leader Emmanuel Macron, was in Paris for Bastille Day. And Bastille Day, for people who don't know, it's sort of this broad celebration. It's not really a celebration of France's military might. It's sort of a celebration of its revolutionary history, values, culture, all that sort of stuff wrapped in one. They do have a display of military, vehicles and all that sort of stuff. But so Trump is there, and he is clearly wowed by this. I mean, I remember at the time, he's just kind of like excited. He thinks this is great. He calls it, quote, one of the greatest parades I have ever seen. He later said it was military might. Throughout his first term, Trump tries to figure out a way to make this happen in the United States. He's never really able to, because the generals that he's got in his military command, the people who are the head of the Defense Department, they're kind of like, might not send the best signal. They wind up eventually doing kind of like an air parade at some point down the East Coast, but it was not big. But he's always wanted to do this ever since he was at Bastille Day in 2017. Now, what is the history of this sort of thing? The last time we had a military parade, really, with all of our sort of military materiel on display, was in 1991 at the end of the Gulf War. Now, back in the days, it was a little bit more common to do kind of shows of military force. So Dwight Eisenhower, who obviously was the kind of commanding general during World War II, when he was elected president at his inauguration, there was some military display. Same thing with John F. Kennedy. He had some of that too. We've moved away from that, and I think one of the main reasons we've moved away from it is because a lot of the countries that do it consistently are not democracies. So a brief list of countries that do this sort of like military might parade regularly: Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. I mean, those are not exactly like beacons of democracy. So I think most politicians have shied away from it. Donald Trump, as we well know, is not most politicians, and he is very much leaning into it. And he now has, in his second term, a Defense Department that's much more compliant. Pete Hegseth wants to do what Donald Trump tells him to do. So Donald Trump wants a military parade. Donald Trump gets a military parade. So let's talk about the cost here. So the initial estimate was around $20 million. That has now moved up to around $40 to $45 million. I'll add that does not include the likely damage that these Abrams tanks are going to do to the DC streets that they're parading through. They weigh 140,000 pounds each. So there is likely to be some street damage. Some of the estimates I have seen say that could be up to $16 million. So top end, you could be looking at around $60 million for this parade. Donald Trump was asked about the cost on Meet the Press relatively recently. Here's what he said. "It's peanuts compared to the value of doing it." He added, "We have the greatest weapons in the world, and we're going to celebrate it." Again, compared to the value of doing it is hard to put a number on, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, that we show military might, that we, like, it's not entirely clear to me what he means by that, but that's what he said, so I wanted to report it. Okay, the criticism. So let's first talk about the counter protests that are happening. So they're organized by this group called No Kings, which is a broad group. It's like 180 affiliate groups that are organizing this. Now, according to them, they are going to have 1,800 rallies in 1,500 cities in all 50 states of the United States, which is huge. I mean, this is all also going to happen on June 14th, on Saturday, even as the parade is happening. Now, there will not be a No Kings protest in D.C. itself. There will be some in sort of Northern Virginia and Maryland, but not in D.C. proper. One of the organizers of the event said, quote, "We want to create contrast, not conflict," as a way to explain why they weren't doing sort of a dueling rally right in the same place where the parade is happening, which I actually think is probably a good thing, because my guess would be there would be some clashes if that happened, violent clashes potentially. We do not need that. So that's the counter protest. Now, the broader criticism is, and I mentioned this a little earlier, the parading of rockets and drones and tanks and soldiers through the streets is usually something that we associate with authoritarian dictatorships, right? Or authoritarian governments, one way or another, right? So Vladimir Putin always does this. Kim Jong-un famously does this, right? Where he oversees and they just roll all these things through. We've seen Iran do this. This is not something that the established democracies of Europe, for example, regularly do. Now, you will say, well, Chris, you mentioned Bastille Day. Yes, they do have some military might at Bastille Day. But again, that is much less a demonstration of... the goal of Bastille Day is not really, and Emmanuel Macron has said this, it's not really to show the world how awesome our weapons are and how tough we are. It's more to celebrate France's history and culture and values. And yes, there are some elements of the military there. But the people who do the kind of parading of all their military might tend to be these places that are ruled either by dictators or authoritarians or both, right? So I think that's the concern. I mean, the cost is not insignificant, people. Like, let's take the bottom end and say it only costs $20 million. That's still a lot of money, especially when we are in the era of Doge, where they are trying to cut and have cut lots of government jobs, lots of government agencies. This is the government spending at least $20 million, and probably, honestly, significantly more than that, on a parade, right? Which, maybe there is symbolic value there. Trump clearly thinks there is, but what we're actually going to get from this, maybe we have a surge in military recruitment and enlistment, maybe, but what we're actually going to get in terms of dollars is minimal, right? So I think that's the criticism. At a time of cutting, we're spending on this. We are doing something that tends to be the kind of thing that is associated with dictatorships and sort of authoritarian regimes. Is this the message we want to send around the world? I would argue Donald Trump would say this is the message we want to send around the world. We're tough. We've got more weapons and more advanced weapons than anybody else. I'll go back to the quote he gave about cost. We have the greatest weapons in the world, and we're going to celebrate it. Now, what he didn't say, but is clearly inherent in that is, and we're going to show the rest of the world that we have the greatest weapons in the world, and we're going to celebrate it. And that will, in his mind, work as a deterrent for anyone who wants to challenge us. Again, the last time we did this was 1991 when we were celebrating the end of a war. We are in peacetime in the United States right now. We are doing it again. I will be obviously covering this, talking about it, writing about it, but I mostly just wanted to give you an overview of everything that we expect to happen in advance. It's going to be a massive story with, I think, a lot of repercussions afterward too, on cost, on so should we be doing this, on how the rest of the world reacts, and I'll obviously stay on top of all that as well. But this will function as sort of an explainer video on how we got here. I asked before, I'll ask again. I hope you subscribe. Independent journalism matters now more than ever. I hope you like and comment on this video. It helps my content get out to more people who are not already subscribers. Last thing, I hope you tell a few people about what I'm building here and why you think it's important and they should subscribe. Okay, everyone, take care.